it's so complex, and there's so many things that George could do with it that it's fascinating. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well,
I don't.
okay. So let me just keep going here. Okay,
Yeah,
keep diving down the rabbit hole with our, marching through the rabbit hole with our tinfoil armor on here.
please do.
So okay, so one of the other things we talked about is, a lot of House Dane, I think, is sort of obviously, once you start talking about it, you have to talk about Ned Stark, and you have to then talk about potentially, Jon Snow and the parentage of him, um, because there's only a few ways it can work, right? Like, Jon's parentage can only be, I'd say there's only three options. There's option one, which is it's all true. Ned did sleep with a random serving person whose name is Wyla, who, of course, works for House Dane. Which, why would you sleep with a random serving person when you're in love with a Shara Dane? Like, this, the likelihood of that just happening is so incredibly small. Like,
Hmm.
on its own, like, forget like we even know R plus L equals J exists. The likelihood of Ned Stark just randomly sleeping with this a while, wet nurse, like house
Nope.
servant, at the same place where, like, the love of his life is at, makes zero sense at all.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense. So then, of course, obviously R plus L equals J, right? You get on that route because John's sort of parentage sort of makes sense. Now, sometimes we want to push John's path forward, right? And that we think he is going to be the prince who's promised, the third head of the dragon, all of that stuff. He's going to end up being the one that fights the whatever, be Azor Ahai, and all of that stuff. Now you can go into sort of the Lightbringer category. Is it going to be the sword? Is he going to have to stab somebody? All of those things in order to do it. Well, the sword, that makes by far the most logical sense to actually be Lightbringer, has to be Dawn. Dawn is like, it's like, it's the only sword that we hear about that has special properties outside of Valyrian steel. It's the
Yes.
only sword we hear about. George talks about how it's something different. It was made from like a comet, right? Or like meteorite, right?
Right.
And it's a pale milk blast, different than Valyrian steel. And the people who wield it are the swords of the morning,
Hmm.
light bringing
Right.
the dawn, ending the long
Long
night.
night. Yeah. Ending the long night. Yes. And that's why I love the connections to this ancient house being something from a distant empire, like a far out station with a light tower and a beacon on and high tower that's shining back to the empire, warning them or whatever. It's a watchtower where in which they could keep the darkness at bay or whatever you want to say. I think that's all awesome. And this sword has been passed down and cherished and whatnot. And you have to be worthy to kind of wield it. So if it is the sword, like this is the interesting thing is that if you have the other thing is, does George want it to all make sense? Does it have to have a clear like connection or whatever, or is it just kind of all discombobulated? Because there's a sword in House Dane, like that is Lightbringer, is Dawn, and then does John, air quote, Azor Ahai, need to wield that, or is it just the freaking dagger that Arya has that she jumps out of the tree with? I mean, like, is it all
Yeah.
just built up to be more than we
Okay.
think? What do you
Well,
got?
right. Okay. So hold on. We're right here. Okay. Because I had to look up, because I know that the Danes themselves sort of also marry into the family, right? The Targaryen
Hmm.
family. The most recent one is Diana Dane. She marries King Maker the First Targaryen, who is the mother of Maester Aemon and King Aegon the Fifth Targaryen.
Hmm.
And then Aegon the Fifth is who we're told it is your line that will you know make the one who's the prince who's promised, right? The one who's going to save the world, right? The whole
They,
deal.
yeah, that's
Well,
interesting.
so if that's the case, then John literally has all three things going for him. He has the fire side of the Targaryens.
Hmm.
He has the Stark blood of the Song of Ice and Fire, and then
Yeah.
also he's got he could potentially be the heir. He has an heir to House Dane, in that he is the Sword of the Morning. He has all three. So maybe Edric
Yeah.
Dane's whole role was to like die in battle and give this sword to his milk brother, but still his brother. Notice that he calls him his brother, Jon Snow. And then Jon Snow will use that as Lightbringer.
Yeah. Don't they say too that the sword, the blade is as pale as milk glass?
Yes.
His milk brother might hand him a sword that's as pale as milk glass. They shared the same milk from the same glass that came from the same you know what. I swear to God, Matt, this is like, it's all there. It's all laid out in front of us, and that's so true. So, are you saying maybe that is what his role was going to be,
Right.
or even still could be? I guess even as still a young individual, right? I
Right.
mean, he's
And then remember, it's the whole born under a falling star, the whole deal,
mhm,
right? And then in the show, now again, this could happen totally different. But in the show, we specifically see him, right, put the sword right there. He puts Dorne right there, so he's then technically born under a falling star. That could totally happen the same way. I mean, in fact, actually, that's potentially pretty likely, right?
mhm, mhm.
Is that if somehow Arthur Dayne is defeated, and then Ned's gonna obviously like have his sword in hand or whatever, then he has to rush up there. So that's potentially possible that happens the same way.
Yeah. Matt, let me go back to something here real quick. At the Tower of Joy, when Eddard is having that vision, Sir Arthur Dane is sad. He has a sad smile.
Right.
He doesn't feel good about this, right? He's not guarding the other royal family. He has orders to guard this tower. And it's
Right.
just like, did he die there? I think he did, maybe, but maybe he didn't. I don't know. It's just something. There was 7-on-3, and supposedly only Ned and Howland Reed make it out. The others, though, gods, it wouldn't surprise me if I mean, some of those guys were well known. They don't just go in undercover. Do they
Yes,
take the
I mean
black?
it's not. It's so okay. So hold on a second here. It's not until Diana. So Diana Dane, right,
Hmm.
has children with King Maekar the First, who we know is Aegon the Fifth. Well, it's not until Aegon the Fifth that's when he starts hearing prophecies about, it's, no Targaryen that we know of before then is hearing prophecies that you're going to be the one who's going to save the realm from everything. It's suddenly Aegon the Fifth and his line. Well, his mother is a Dane, so perhaps in the Sword of the Morning,
Hmm.
maybe that is the missing. Maybe it's the whole deal. Maybe it's the whole
Yeah,
trifecta there.
I think it is. And here's the other thing too. So that's like that missing piece, that missing third, that third head, air quote, to the dragon. But Matt, like something that's interesting that we talk about with young Griff, or um, even the Blackfire line, is that it may not be extinct through the female side of that. And now we
Yeah.
have John. So George makes note of that sometimes we lose track of these individuals who marry into families, and they change their name. Their maiden name is changed, and they take on the title Targaryen, and they have Targaryen children, but yet those individuals are descended from House Dane, technically, right? Technically they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's probably why. Well, gosh, I mean, shoot, we almost need to look and see how, because we don't have like how Ashara and those guys also, tie in. But either way, they've got the features, the Targaryen / Valyrian like features. So, and there's a marriage that happens there. So John is definitely, whether it's Ashara and Ned, if you believe that, or if it's R plus L equals J, there's a House Dane connection.